one, and I think we should be live. Hi, everyone. I am here with John Ross. John and me, we're going to talk Warzone Atlanta. Uh, so, and we're going to talk about meta and all kinds of different stuff.
Yeah.
I think we'll try and limit ourselves to maybe half an hour today, and then maybe once all the lists are in, we can do another video where we talk about what we're seeing and meta and stuff. But right now, let's just talk about general thoughts as we are right now. We're about a month away from Warzone. How is everything going? The planning and the process?
Well, as you know, when you host events, you're essentially throwing a birthday party for 300 or 400 people.
Yep.
And so you look down at your guest list and to say that the disaster is if no one shows up. But what if too many show up? And so, do you have enough
That's
food?
also a
Do you have,
disaster.
space, hotel rooms, all of this or that? We doubled the space for Warzone this year. This is our 10th or 11th year, I forget which, of running the event. So it's got Warhammer 40K. We've got a 4K narrative tournament. We've got Blood Bowl. We've got Age of Sigmar, and Bolt Action's the only historical game that we're playing. There may be a couple of other systems going on there. And unlike a convention, where
It's
you've got a bunch
turning
of
more and
walk-up
more into a
games,
convention, isn't it?
it's becoming something unique. I don't know anything.
Yeah.
It's a war zone. It's a war game tournament convention.
Yeah.
Everything is a tournament.
Yeah.
And so there's not a lot of pickup games, although people
Yeah.
do that, and you don't have a bunch of vendors there. It's just really focused on bringing people together for competitive play for a weekend. It's February
Are you thinking
7th.
about maybe at some point allowing vendors to attend?
So we do. I don't charge them. If
Okay.
vendors want to come and they want to set up tables and do that, that's really great. I think that's a service to the community.
Yeah.
And Warzone operates as a not-for-profit. So our objective is to raise money either for Toys for Tots or for a veterans charity here in Georgia that helps with veterans that are, struggling with PTSD symptoms, coming out of wartime. So, if we raise $1,000 more than whatever our expenses are, that goes right to the charity after we cover our expenses. So
Yeah.
it's all volunteers. It's February 7th to the 9th this year. This is the first time we've done it in first quarter. Normally we do it over Veterans Weekend here in the United States, which is
Yeah.
kind of the theme. But unfortunately, Games Workshop decided to drop their narrative event in Atlanta on the same weekend that we normally do. And so
And
rather
that
than make,
competition is just too much, isn't it? Yeah.
I mean, they charge $400 US for a ticket to go to that thing. And we thought the first year we wouldn't have a lot of people be pulled away, but we did. And so rather than make people have to make a choice, we just moved it to February. So wish me luck on this one because I doubled the hotel space. I've doubled everything. You can get upside down pretty fast on these.
Yeah. Right. So last year was a huge success, right?
We set new records for attendance all over, but we blew out the hotel. We were completely maxed out on all space. Every corner was being used. So this year we shifted to a much bigger hotel. It's an Atlanta Marriott. And we've got much more space. But the Warzone thing is we consume space because we set the tables up so no two tables touch.
Yeah.
And that way you're not bumping butts with somebody. You've got space to walk around a table if the scenario requires it, which means that we consume ballroom space. If you're bringing 350 people in to play tournaments all going on simultaneously, we consume ballroom space at a huge rate.
Yeah.
And the way hotels work in the United States, I don't know about Europe, but you can either pay a huge fee for the room or they'll give you the room for free if you commit to spending so much money on hotel rooms or on food. So what we do is I bake lunch into the ticket price for Saturday and Sunday. Everyone gets a 3-course, 4-course, 5-course buffet. Man, we get dessert and everything. It's really nice. But I bake that into the ticket price. And as long as we get enough people to come, it's great.
Yeah.
But if not, I end up on the hook.
Enough people. Yeah.
And there's been a couple years where we lost some pretty significant money. Hopefully this will not be it. But it's always, is it going to work every year?
A little bit. Right. So let's talk about the actual Bold Action event that's going to happen this year. You've already started getting lists in, but could you maybe just talk us through the pack, what you're doing this year for limitations or
Yeah, so there's actually 2 tournaments. There's a 750-point recon tournament on Friday that starts to noon, and those games are limited to 5 turns with a maximum of 6 on a roll. So it's kind of, I thought it would be like a a
Quick.
V3 primer, come in, play some
Yeah.
games, get the cobwebs out, learn the new, for a lot of new players, get some tournament experience because there haven't been many in the US on V3. And then Saturday and Sunday is the GT style event. So it's 5 games. It's 1,250 points. And my
How long
pack
time do
has
you give people for 1250? Because that's one of the things everyone is like, how long do you need for that?
3 hours per game.
Yeah, that's what I would recommend as well. Yeah.
And we don't know, like, is 1250 even possible in a tournament setting, given the way the new Force org allows people to max out on dice counts we've never seen before. So
Yeah.
it's really
36
tricky.
order dice is the highest I've seen.
A 44.
44, right.
44. Someone sent me a 44 dice list going, I think this is
Wow.
probably what you won't allow. And I went, you are right. I would not allow this. I don't think it would win much, but it was interesting that he could get it up there. It was filled with dogs and anti-tank rifles spam out the wazoo.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah,
silly.
well, then it's really cheap if you're buying dog mines and AT rifles for all of those 1250 points. Yeah.
Yeah, for 3 slots each. The new Force org structure, which
Yeah.
on one hand says, play with all your toys. You can build any kind of list you want. Isn't that great, right? In a tournament setting for a
Yeah.
TO, that puts this enormous burden on our shoulders
It does.
to figure out, how do I set up something that's going to be fair and fun for everyone? And how do I do it so people finish their games?
Yeah. Because at some point, I think the TO community is going to have to talk about dice cabs or something like that, because you can, with this Force organization chart, you can spam out order dice so easily that you can really go into the 20s, the 30s, the 40s, as you said, really easily. Because there's so many options of getting cheap dice that can still do something. Maybe not great, but they can still do something. Yeah.
But I don't know what the game designers inside strategy was with the new Force org. I wasn't a play tester. I have no inside knowledge of what they were trying to do. I don't know that they really thought through the consequences of what the new Force org structure would allow someone who is trying to min-max or to take very powerful units and exploit them
Yeah.
in multiples that were not possible in most tournaments in V2.
And
And
now
so
it really is, yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, if you want to spam multi-launchers, if you want to spam, Italian tankettes or whatever you want to do, right? You can
Yeah.
now do it because the cost of the rifle platoon,
Yeah.
inexperienced lieutenant, 2 green inexperienced shirker squads is like nothing. And now all
It's
of a
a
sudden
maximum of 70 points, I think. 75 maybe.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're blazing away. And then but then the flip side, like when people are calling me saying, well, give me some advice on how I should build a list, I'm telling them, build a competitive list, build the one that you want to play. But as you're building it, if you're giggling because the new version creates an exploit you couldn't do before, if you're snickering about how you're going to catch somebody by surprise with 8 Nebel Warfers, don't bring that list. Please don't, because I'm going to reject it.
Oh, John, that's oh, oh. Well, it's what we have to do right now, and I agree. I just hate the way that you're doing that. I have to say it. I really dislike that, because it turns into some sort of subjective, what does the
It's
TO
so
like and hate,
Yeah.
and it's not. Oh,
So
oh.
I don't have comp. There's no dice limit. Well,
No.
the minute each of these is like, he's got positive. You go down the dice limit thing,
Yeah.
and suddenly now I'm telling a Soviet player, a Japanese player, they can't play to the style of the army, those kind of horde army or an early war French army. That's not fair, right? So I said, no, forget dice. I'm going to limit specific units.
Okay.
Now that's a trap too, because you start
Yeah.
going down like, what are you going to limit? You'll catch yourself by surprise.
Yeah.
I'm going to limit, all machine gun tanks. Well, what about autocannon tanks?
Yeah.
You can spam autocannon tanks. What about not tanks? What about autocannons themselves? What about artillery lists? So, pretty soon you get into trouble. And you saw what WTC did. Dan put out a limit 0 to 2 on anything other than what comes in the base rifle platoon.
Yep.
Which sounds okay, except that the way Warlord Games has done their tank listings, they've been really sloppy.
Yeah.
So in some instances, there's a model number for the new tank because it's got a machine gun or something different on it. And so you can take 2 of this one and 2 of this one and 2 of this one and 2 of this one. And that doesn't solve the problem either.
Exactly. It's so for me, I think one of the possible future solutions is in modifying the force organization charts themselves.
Yeah.
I think that's maybe where I'm going at some point. But we shall see. Right now, I still feel like we should test out version 3 for a bit longer before we start comping stuff. I don't know how you feel about that. I think it's still early days for me.
It is. I mean, so this will be, it's either the first or it's tied with being the first GT style V3 game going on in the US. LVO may be a week or two ahead of me. I don't know. I don't know the dates on it, but we don't have any data
No.
on what's happening. And there's some surprise lists, and and some of the stuff is more subtle than you think. I don't think we've really seen. I have not seen a tournament list that takes full advantage of the recon platoon.
No.
And being able to put, everyone's like down on assault engineers and all the rest of it, but flamethrowers and trucks that also have recce, that could prove to be really scary, powerful in ways a lot of people aren't really thinking. So we haven't even seen that one pop up.
Nope.
And how many others are out there that we haven't even begun to think of? I mean,
exactly. Yeah.
The 4 Air Observer interview you did
with Alistair. Yeah.
With Alistair, right? Yeah. What a great video explaining how really nasty that mechanic is when you are able to just rule the board of it.
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, and for me, that's exactly why I want us to wait before we comp everything a little bit more, because I think we need a few tournaments where some players break everything and just rule the tables with some combinations, so that the TOs, us basically, can see, well, this is maybe not fun, and we can't, we can sit and meta talk about it. I think, for instance, that gun lines is boring, and you can really spam gun lines, and multi-launchers is boring, and you can also spam those, and I think maybe tanks are overpowering, and so you could also spam those, and maybe all those things need to be comped. But what about all the things that me and John don't notice, right? So we need the players to notice all the good stuff for us before we start even thinking about what needs comp and what doesn't. Yeah.
So some of the lists I'm receiving so far, without betraying anybody's
let's talk about
secret
those,
strategy. Right?
How many lists have you got in right now?
I probably have about 16, 18 of them so far. I've got a capacity for 50. Yeah. My guess is I'm going to end in the high 30s with people who actually show up, because what people say they're going to do, and when they go buy a ticket, those are sometimes two different things.
Yeah, true.
But I currently do have slots, and I've got the space this year. Last year I didn't have the space for this many players, so that's great. So, but before we get into the list, actually, I think the TO's got a couple of other weapons that we can use. So one is scenario design.
Yeah.
So you can use the scenarios to prevent a static gun line, for example, from being so overpowering, or the use or not use of fog of war, some of the deployment types, in order to make things trickier. And the second weapon we have is the tables. So my tables, Warzone tables, are dense. Some of them are full villages, and there's a lot of buildings on the tables. There's a lot of huge copses of trees, and so it prevents the boring game of two people lining up the toys on either side and just shooting at these, like, Warhammer 40K Imperial gun lines. That is a boring game.
That sucks.
So the combination of comps, or what rules we're going to put in place, and then I did a couple of other rules. So one of the rules I put in place for the tournament is that in forward deployment or infiltrate, right, that no more than 2 units could set up touching within 12 inches of the enemy board edge.
Yeah.
Because there is that setup where someone brings the Soviet scout squads out the wazoo and lines them all along the table, and they won the game before it started, right? Yeah. Let's not do that. And I changed the way.
That could also be done with you. A simple solution would be you can never deploy inside of 12 of the opposing player's DCE.
Yeah.
That could also fix that. But I like the fact that you 2 units max. That's perfectly fine. Yeah.
You want to sneak some people over there, but you're not going to shut the whole board down with those
No.
with those two units. So I think we've got tools in scenario construction, and we've got tools in how the boards are laid out to ensure that there aren't just big, huge sweep. The classic airfield board
Oh
with
yeah,
this massive open space in the middle. Put some
yeah.
wrecks in there, and you could.
That'll be a kill zone
Yeah,
in V3.
exactly. So, but figuring that all out and how it's going to play out, I tell you, I really don't know. Okay, so some lists. It's actually quite interesting. So I've gotten quite a few German lists.
Yeah.
So in V2 we didn't get lots of German lists. I'm
We're
getting
seeing a
lot of
lot
German.
more German lists now.
Yeah.
And they're better. For me, they're better. I rate them higher when I look at lists from German players, people who play German. I think that they are better than they were just because of the rule changes. How do you feel about them?
Oh, they are. So the fact that you're able to actually do something turns 1 and 2 with small arms fire makes Germans that can spit out small arms fire really good. So their base
Really
infantry
good, yeah.
squads can potentially be very powerful, in a way, kind of like the big American squads used to be, right? And they've got every possible toy. A lot of people have tried to submit full artillery platoons full of Nebelwerfers or
Yeah.
Howling Cows or something.
Yeah.
And while I didn't put a limit on them, I'll say it here, and I'll actually put it up on the webpage. Please don't submit any more than 3.
Yeah.
3's plenty. You could do 3 in V2 if you wanted. It was
You
possible
could.
to do it.
You could. For Germans, you could. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think 3's probably still too many, but I'm saying no more than 3 because that's just not a fun game. And if you brought 12 and you swiped someone off the board because you rolled a bunch of 6s turns 1 and 2, is that a fun game? I mean, you did that to me at WTC with 1.
Yeah. True. And it happens, and it's for me it's the lack of skill that really bugs me, because when you win via that multi-launcher, it's not because you were better than your opponent, right? It's because you were freaking lucky, right? And yeah, that's it may be fun for people who like rolling 6s. I don't know. I don't go to casinos and but for me it's yeah, no.
If you play basketball
Yeah.
against your 8-year-old and you beat them, do you
Yeah.
feel good about that? And that's
Yeah.
kind of what that
That's
feels like to me. It's like and the same thing with prep bombardment.
Mm.
So if
Oh,
you've
I
ever
don't miss that. I really don't miss that.
so I've included prep bombardment in a couple of missions.
Okay.
But I've changed the way the rule works so that you can roll no more than 2 6s.
Mm.
So if you get 2 6s, then every 6 after that is counted as a 5, and that prevents someone getting super lucky at the very beginning of the game and just destroying someone. Yeah. So that's the German list. I'm seeing lots of Panzer IIIs, as you would expect.
Yeah.
I'm seeing Panzer IIICs, the ones with the double machine guns, which I guess aren't going to be a thing. Is that right?
I'm hearing rumors that the armies of Germany may remove that.
Yeah, I heard that rumor too, which is unfortunate because I got a bunch of them and they're very pretty.
You can still run them as Panzer IIIs, I think.
I think perhaps, yeah. So we'll see there. Soviet lists, lots of anti-tank rifles.
Yeah, they are great. I'm sorry, they're just so good.
Lots of anti-tank rifles, and they can spam them out. So far, I haven't seen a list yet where I go, the counter is a 2-man team. They'll jump out and shoot, but once they shoot, if you've got anything that can shoot back at them, these little mini teams melt so fast.
Yeah.
So
yeah, you have to use them very late in the turn, which means that you have to have other units that go early, which you may not have.
I've seen a light tank spam list with two armored companies, so 10 little tanks. They might be really, 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 really slow. So far, I've allowed that list. I think that'll be fun. I know the Juggernauts are down on that. They think that's like going to destroy people's day, but I don't really think so. So we'll see.
For me, it depends on a lot of other things. But I have seen, and I may have also thought out a little bit of what I call tank bowling, where you bring a lot of very light tanks and you just rush the enemy. Yeah.
Well, the kind of one of the surprise things kind of buried in the lists that as you play more V3 games, you go, wow, this is way stronger than I thought,
Mm.
is the fact that tanks can now turn and
Yeah.
launch a tank assault. And any,
And you can turn twice if you're just advancing, but
yeah.
turning on the assault is just whoosh.
Before it was rare because you had to kind of have lined it up the turn before, and you had to
Yeah.
run, and you had to be
Yeah.
in no terrain. And it was very rare.
Now
Now,
it's
pulling off
now you
tank,
can do it all the time.
you can do it all the time. And that the combo being able to put 2 or 3 pins on somebody and
Yeah.
then be able to tank assault them. I was just on the Juggernaut show, and one of the things that they've been saying was, pins don't matter, pins don't matter. That is not my experience at all.
Yeah.
They're just different the way they work.
They're very different. And for
Yeah.
me, I think I'm a little bit on the Jugger team there with pins not mattering. A lot of people are telling me that they matter, and they do in some ways, I think, but they're not as impactful in making people fail their order tests as they used to be because there are officers everywhere, right? But they do matter in other ways, and I completely agree with that.
Well, at World Open War, my 222 armored car ran off the table in more than half of the games that I played with a single pin on it.
Exactly.
In your mind, when you're playing the game and your officer's in the center and everything's in this bubble, it's just not the way the games, especially with terrain, right? It's not, and especially with objectives, it's not the way the games. By turns 3 and 4, you end up spread. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see.
We'll see. But yeah, those pins that actually kill units because they fail the test and they run off the board. That is where pins really matter a lot. Yeah.
I haven't seen a Japanese list yet.
Yeah.
And I think that's telling.
That's very telling. Yeah.
Because they were so strong.
I had someone on the internet trying to argue a few days ago that Japanese were good in V3, and I'm not seeing that. No. I'm going to a tournament next weekend, and in that tournament we have one Japanese list out of 24 or something like that. So, yeah, the Japanese are gone from the meta more or less.
No. Italian list. I've got a couple Italian players, which is good to see.
Yeah.
When you remove the horrendous negative rules and you just let people play the game, and you can't run on turn 1, which is an old rule. They've had that forever, but that rule in the new version with all this artillery is really, really, really good. Finish lists look really strong to me. I think people can little autocannon tanks and people moving into ambush and all the tricks that they can do just seem like V3 just gives them a giant power boost.
It does.
The American lists, I'm still seeing players. I'll tell you the other thing I'm seeing, Bo, of the lists that I've seen so far is people submitting pretty much a V2 list.
Yeah. Yeah, that happens. That's also a lot of players are still submitting like something that you could definitely build in V2 for me as well. I'm seeing that. Yeah.
And then I have not yet gotten I've seen artillery lists with a bunches of either Nebelwerfers or autocannons.
Yeah.
I haven't seen a heavy weapons platoon yet filled with mortars or filled with that. I've seen heavy weapon platoons filled with anti-tank rifles, but I haven't seen one of those submitted yet. I'm kind of surprised. I would have expected to see that.
Yes, I think I would. So I would have as well. What about medium machine guns? Are they something that anyone are trying out except me? What?
You and inexperienced medium machine guns. You and I are completely at opposite sides of the value of the medium machine gun team. But so far, no, I haven't seen. I expected an American player to show up with a slew of them. And
because
I haven't seen it yet.
Spam them, and well, they might be useful at some point. Yeah, but okay.
So Warzone is an interesting tournament. So I think it's interesting because it's my thing. Of course, I think it's interesting. But I do primary mission objectives, which are matched as closely to the book missions as possible. Of course, I've edited a lot of them, and I've taken some of the weird combos out where the objectives and the mission types
they don't really match up. Yeah.
I cleaned it up, and I rewrote Top Secret. I rewrote Demolition to be more tournament friendly because I think those are really terrible missions.
Yeah, they are.
Whether we end up playing either one of them or not, no. But I published all the missions that are out there. But there's primary, but there's also a secondary objective on every table. So
Okay.
the primary may be, objectives, but the secondary may be, getting more units into the opponent's deployment zone.
Yeah.
And then this year, for the first time, I've created a tertiary objective,
Okay.
which is a random one. So at the beginning of the game, you roll the tertiary objective. It does not count towards your score, but you're in competition to see who wins the most tertiary objectives. And if you win them all, then you'll get a little token or prize at the end of the event.
Nice.
And the tertiary are all things that you can choose to do, like launch an assault with your officer, try to launch a tank assault. Doesn't have to be successful, right? And that way, even if you're getting slammed,
You can
you can
still
go
go
for the
and
tertiary,
try and
right?
get. Oh, I like that. I really like that. Yeah.
At Warzone, I try to give everyone a new token or an objective marker or something. I'm actually still working on what that's going to be, and I'm running out of time. And then I've got these former Soviet era. Can you see that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I have these former Soviet era medals that I buy in bulk, and I give because I think you go to a historical tournament, you should get something cool, right?
You should get something. Yeah.
And because the Soviet Union as an army no longer exists anymore, I feel okay handing them out in a way of, a U.S. or a British medal.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Right. So everyone gets that, and they get a T-shirt too. So you can so it's kind of a cool thing, and I hope that when people come out of Warzone this year, and they'll be proud to wear their T-shirt and have this pinned to their bag and show their template or whatever. And I hope they talk about it having been that they're understanding that we as TOs are doing the best we can right now with very little information. I hope that's true.
Yeah.
I mean, just don't be a dick at your army creation stage and send it to me and let me judge. Boy, that is fraught with risk. Yeah.
Right. John, it's been great talking to you. I'm really looking forward to hearing what lists you end up getting and how the meta shapes up for this Warzone Atlanta. I am still looking into maybe coming and playing at some point in the future. Not this year, but I definitely want to go. I think right now you're actually Warzone Atlanta is one of the tournaments in the US that's the most successful. It's really doing well, so it's great talking to you about it, and I really wish you luck this time around as well.
Well, you need to come like as a roving reporter and get a sponsor. You need like Army Painter or something to sponsor you to come, because you've got a huge audience now. You're an influencer.
Apparently so.
Right.
Although I think my videos need a lot more views in order for that to happen, but
well, you just need an OnlyFans page and take some clothes off or something, and that would crank it up.
I should be on OnlyFans. That's true. Yeah. Right.
So hey, before we go, I need to publicly welcome you to the USA WTC team. Thank you for joining one of our USA teams. You're going to be we're going to have to get you an American flag T-shirt and a MAGA cap. I mean, it's going to be great.
Yeah. It's going to be great. Yeah. I'm really going to, and I'm going to lean into it. I think I need a cowboy hat or a MAGA hat or
not a MAGA hat. No, please, no.
Revolvers or something.
Well, all Americans do walk around armed now. So
yeah. No, they don't. I was in the US over the summer, and I saw like one person carrying a gun. So no.
It's I can only imagine what it might seem like from the crazy news stories that you're getting. We couldn't be more excited to have you come play with us. And I've got 4 American teams going to Europe, going to England. So the 16 players, or 15 and one honorary.
Cool. John, you've been doing a massive amount of work for that, and I think it's so cool that you guys can send off 4 teams. That means that you are going to be, with the exception of 1 year where the Spanish had 4 or 5 teams as well, you are going to be the nation that is most well represented in the World Championships.
How cool is that?
How cool is that?
I love it.
Right. I'll speak to you again, and I will definitely see you at the WTC. John, thank you so much for tuning in, and to everyone else, it's been great having you, and we hope to see you again next time we talk. Cheers.
Cheers.